Hello everyone, here is Manuel again. Finally, I'm back and welcome to a new podcast where I will basically talk about some random arguments, not really random, and try to give, in this case, not really a perspective, but actually probably some useful information coming directly from experiences that I had. What do I mean by that is that this totally relates from why I haven't been publishing videos for the past 3 weeks. I've been traveling quite a lot, I've been very busy and finally had the time to make a video. So what happened, I traveled to Rome for sort of mix of personal and somehow business reasons, and I traveled from the UK to Italy. And what I want to tell you about the experience of traveling during COVID times. And on top of that, I don't have only this experience, but I have the experience of me traveling, this was back in September, from the UK to Spain. And the more you travel, the more experiences of the same type you have, the more you can sort of generalize the experience and, extract the real information. And at that point, you can keep it for yourself or you can share with others. And in this case, I'm gonna try to tell you how it's like to basically travel in or what are the things that you're supposed to be doing now that we are in COVID times. Truth is that with COVID, we have more restrictions and we have to do more tests or more things in order to plan our trip. So this adds to the stress, because if something doesn't go as you expect, for example, if one of the tests that you have to do is positive, meaning that you have the virus, well, that's gonna complicate your travel more. So that adds to the stress. On other cases, what if you just get to know the day before that you are supposed to be doing some sort of tests before taking the flight, and you don't know where to do this test, and you just go crazy the day before. And there is a reason to that, but that's what somehow happened to me. In the end, I always managed to solve the situation, but that was that happens, and I'm gonna share it with you. So, as I said, I went from UK to Spain, and then from Spain to the UK back, and then from UK to Italy, and then from Italy to UK back. So reality is, even though you can see the trip as you go and you go back, from the point of view of the country, it doesn't care if you're going or if you're coming back. The only thing that they care about is that you are departing from their place and going to somewhere else, and vice versa. When you are arriving, the company that is welcoming you, he only cares where you're from and how can he keep track of you. That's the thing. And you basically have to do it both ways. So you have to understand before, when you plan to go somewhere, you have to understand what are the rules to leave the country that you're departing from, and what are the rules. I'm changing music. What are the rules for you to enter the other country? And then basically when you return from your holidays, if these are your holidays, you have to do the opposite. You have to understand what are the rules for the country that you have initially departed from, what are the rules for that country to come in, and then what are the rules for the country that you arrived, what are the rules to go out of that country. How does this work? Yeah, it can feel a little bit overwhelming because you have to go through the rules. So what I suggest is, if you are planning to have a trip, you take your half day and it's just gonna be one half day to go through the information. You can divide the half day in two, so you can like check for a couple of hours how you live, and you enter the country you're departing from initially, and what are the other 2 hours, and then in the next 2 hours you're gonna understand what are the rules for the other country to come in and go out, and you sort of take notes of that. Now I can probably add a little bit more to that, in which what are usually these rules. So basically, when you enter a country, what they are usually requesting you to do, it's basically a locator form, a passenger locator form. So the locator form will ask you different type of informations which you just have to fill in, and so it has some requirements which then you have somehow to fulfill. So an example, when you come back or when you enter the UK, when you compile and you fill up the passenger locator form, you are supposed to have bought a 2-day test, COVID test. Now it can be a PCR or a lateral flow test, I think from today. Now it's the end of October 2021. So the rules keep changing. That's what I'm saying. Check the rules. But the locator form, in the end, it's the rules will tell you basically what are the requirements for the locator form in general. And now for the locator form, you have to have both this test, and then you have to put this unique reference identifier in the locator form, so they can find you and everything. And in the locator form, you have also to tell them where are you gonna stay for the next 10 days or so. So hopefully you have all that information and you can fill it up. If you don't have it, then you are forced somehow to do it. Now the truth is, you cannot be sure that everything will go to plan. Like if you maybe booked a place in an Airbnb, you might have the person just canceling just maybe 1 or 2 days before. What are you gonna do with the locator form? This case, they are not gonna check that much, so don't care about it. You fill it up and with the information that you had, and just concentrate on changing the Airbnb or finding a new Airbnb. And if you want, you might be able to manage but do it afterwards, the locator form, and try to change the address if you really believe that. So what is the output of the locator form? It's basically it's gonna be a PDF with a QR code that they're gonna scan, hopefully. So the locator form, there is a locator form basically for every country, from what I've seen. At least in Spain, they checked it. In Italy, they really didn't. But for what I understood, it was just because of the airport that I enter. So it doesn't look like in the airport it's very there are so many people that they have difficulties in checking, all of them at least, so they have that sort of troubles. So I've been just not checked, but by chance, and normally they will check your QR code, so be ready with that. And this works out even when you enter and when you go out. When you enter the country, so you need a locator form, you need usually a test. In the case of the UK, they used to require a test to enter, which was a certification coming from the from some sort of test company from the country you departed from. So I was coming from Italy to the UK. I needed at the beginning, actually that was from Spain to the UK, I needed a lateral flow test being negative. I brought my own test from the UK, but they're not accepted. So I had to, and luckily now you can find a test center in every airport. I needed to make a test at the airport. I booked it. I was lucky that I managed to book it, but you can also do it at last minute. Unfortunately, if it's really last minute, that's not gonna work, because they're probably gonna lose the flight. What you're supposed to be doing is try to go very early at the airport, maybe even 3 hours before. Then you'll have the time to do your test, and then also do the queue and do the check-in and everything that you have to do it. If you arrive 1 hour and a half before the flight, then you're probably fucked, because there's gonna be quite a queue in the at the certificate at the test center of the airport. So go a little bit early if you haven't booked. If you have booked, you can go 1 hour and a half. They are gonna attend you as soon as you arrive there, more or less. There is a very short queue for people who have booked. So that's what happened. I did my test almost last minute, but I managed to book it the day before. And then just before entering the queue for the security check, the person, or well, not the person, but the company emailed me the certification that it was negative, and therefore I could go and take my flight. Somehow that was sort of stressful, because I did it really last minute, even before entering the security check. If it turned out to be positive, then that would be a mess, because guess what, I couldn't have taken the flight. I probably should have self-isolated myself for I don't know how many days, and I had to book another place to stay in Spain in that case, and I probably had to self-isolate, therefore not a hostel but a hotel, so it would have been more expensive. So luckily I think the vaccination worked perfectly, because when I went to Spain, I went to a lot of hostels, I went a lot of people, really a lot of them, and I'm pretty sure that I would have gotten it without the vaccination. Or actually, I probably have got in touch with a person that had COVID. I'm quite sure about that, because COVID looks like to be so easy to transmit that I must have got in touch with a person that had it somehow. Maybe it was asymptomatic and passed it to me, and I think that my vaccination, my immune system worked, and they just kicked. I didn't get it in the end, the virus. That's my perception of what happened, because I really met hundreds of people in 3 weeks traveling in Spain, and so that's what I think it happened. Then in Italy, very similar story. I needed to provide a negative test before taking the flight from the UK to Italy, so I did it. It was not strictly required, but I preferred to do it for some sort of conceptual thinking. This is the right thing to be doing, so I did it. And how I got to know that, I just have to check the rules multiple times in this case, and check that, yeah, it's much better if I do it, because then I don't have to self-isolate for 5 days, even though I got the vaccination. You can go without having the lateral test, but then you're supposed to do the self-isolation for 5 days. If you do the test, you don't have, because supposedly you prove that you don't have it when you enter. But then when you go in and they check all this stuff, they're supposed to be checking the locator form and the thing that you have you're being fully vaccinated when you basically satisfy all the requirements to enter the country that you're departing from when you take the flight. So that's when they do all the checks. Not really at the check-in. The check-in, yeah, if you have luggages, they will check you at the check-in. If you don't have luggages and you have just a bag, then they're gonna check you at the gate. So you're not gonna be saved, believe me. They're gonna check you in the end that you can enter the country you're departing to. And then so they will check the gate for the country that you're departing to. The country that you are departing from doesn't really care if you have it or not. Let's put it this way. They're like, yeah, you can go whenever you want. You don't have to do checks for the country that you're performing from, only when you come back. And it's the same thing of entering another country. So I know that it's very stressful, but believe me, if you just amount more time in your planning somehow, and do not plan too much, but planning a little bit for the travel, you easily go through all of these steps, and they have been made to be sort of similar for every country. They might slightly differentiate a little bit, but you're gonna manage to do that. I'm sure about it. And it can add to the stress of the travel. So just think that do not take last minute things or trains or flights, just go earlier, so that if something unexpected happens, maybe there is some form that you have to fill and you forgot, you have the time to do it. And that is gonna really sort of stretch or distribute the stress in a larger amount of time. Instead of having 10 minutes before the gate closes and do what you have to do, you have 1 hour. It's much better, believe me. So just take more time for your trip, more than what you used to do it, and that's gonna work. Check the rules of the company, of the country that you are entering, because all these rules will be checked at the gate when you take the flight. And do the test. Usually there is a test before taking the flight, and there is also a test. There might be a test when you arrive to the country. It's not always like that, but be sure that you have it. And if there is a test that it's required to enter a country, believe me, you are gonna notice, because they're gonna stop you when you're gonna have to fill up the passenger locator form. They're gonna force you to book it or do it. Otherwise, do not mind too much. So say that, I know this prolonged a little bit more, and I probably gave you a lot of information to sort of process. I hope I summarized it properly at the end. And thanks for listening to me. I hope that it was useful and you can somehow use it and maybe relax it a little bit more. Unfortunately, you cannot do much about it. These are new rules that have been added to the thing that you need passports, you need visa to enter a country legally. Now you also have to provide that you have basically you are healthy person in terms of the virus. So these are checks that have been added, and they're obviously gonna add more stress to your trip. So just distribute it with more time. Instead of planning everything like every day, what you're gonna do is remove that planning time. You don't need it. Add it. Use that time to sort of understand how to pass the tests and do the tests, and then do the pass through the gate. So thanks for listening to me again, and hopefully see you next time, and see ya. Have a nice day and week.